Welcome back. In today's video, we're taking a look at one of my favorite board games at the minute, Runescape Kingdoms. We've only played it a few times, so it is still very much new to us, so there could be some recency bias. Although I do just think it plays really well. It's one of my favorite campaign games we've played through. The theme speaks to me. I'm a massive RuneScape fan. Obviously grew up on the game. Growing up in the 90s, it was the game to play. Still play it now. Obviously it's very easy to have on in the background so you can train stuff up and get ready. There are fun stuff to do. There's raids and things. They've added a ton of new stuff. It's honestly amazing how long it's actually lasted. But today, like I say, we are looking at the board game. So let's get down to the table and I'll show you how it plays. So you have some idea if it's the game for you. At the end, I'll do a slight recap and review of how we found it. But let's get into it. I did notice there's like no how to plays online. So hopefully this helps. This is the board we're going to be playing on. These are the miniatures. We'll get into that in a minute. These are going to be all of the quests you can play through. So as you can see, Vampire Slayer is the beginner one. That is the one we're going to set up here, just so you have some idea of how it works. We're not going to play through a full game. You can also play through Tutorial Island. We did skip this. It's a great way to get into the game, honestly. I do think if you're looking to play it and you don't want to learn the rules, you're just here for a review, go through Tutorial Island. It sort of plays your turns for you. It shows you through the game. And it's a very good way to get into it. And finally, you've got your character sheet. So these are going to be how you play and design your character. Obviously, create your name up here, your username. Keep track of wounds and deaths over here. Cape objectives. So as you play the game, you tick off these objectives. If you tick them all off, you can gain your cape, which gives you a massive boost. Like the knight will get a fire cape. The clue hunter will get a third age cape. Stuff like that. Very similar to what you would expect in the game. Over this side, we get all of the rules, gives you some reference on what to do on turns. These are all your skills, so as you level up, you're going to get an XP in each. When you get your third piece of XP, that levels you up. You can go all the way up to 99, so quite a long game, as I mentioned. It's going to be very interesting, this campaign. And then you've got a few other things like side quests. As you complete them, tick them off and make a tally. Then as you do so many, you get some bonuses as well. Keep your resources here, your gold pieces here. That's the character sheet though. So here's the board. This is Gielenor. So if you played the game, you're probably going to recognize it. Varrock, the most recognizable. Falador, Lumbridge. We've also got Berthorpe and Edgeville. So let's set it up like this. You can set it up however you want. Obviously in the book, there will be a suggestion. I'll just show you that quickly. But honestly, as long as it's set up and you've got all the stuff you need, this is what they suggest. I like spreading stuff out. It's quite a big game, so if you're playing with a group of people, we played with 5. It's nice to have the tokens spread around so one person's not doing everything. But that's how they suggest it. But this is how we're going to set up. So you want this on this side. You don't necessarily need this board currently. This is going to come out when you fight a mini boss. And mini boss is a little later into the story. I'm not going to go into the story and ruin any of that. I do think you should just play through it yourself. It's a type of game where playing through it a few times is even worth it. Obviously, there's a lot of random events, so... Right, you'll notice a load of cards on the table now. I'm going to go through them quickly, just what they are. So these are different options when you explore somewhere. So this one obviously corresponds to Berthorpe and all the red ones. So if you enter any of these areas or finish your turn there, you will get to explore. Basically, you'll flip it over, find the corresponding place. This one is White Wolf Mountain. It says random event. So in that case, we would go to the random events deck, make sure it's shuffled up, and then reveal one. Now this, when we played for our game, somebody did try and kiss the frog. I won't spoil that, but that's quite a fun event. Definitely give it a go if you get the chance. So these are always going to be random. They're going to be different for each quest. You're going to get different ones added. So for example, there's some in the vault. So as you go around and do quests and complete things, you're going to get a chance to go into the vault. Sometimes they shuffle extra events into here. So the game is, like I say, it's always different. It's worth playing through more than once, I would say. I would happily play through this campaign or this chapter again. Found it really interesting. We got through it by the skin of our teeth. It was honestly, honestly the closest thing imaginable. It came down to one roll in the end. It came down to one of our players needing to defend against the vampire and then actually knock it out that turn, else we were going to lose. And he managed not only to defend, but also knock it out that turn. And we managed to run away with a win, which was, pretty cheeky. But like I say, it's a fun game. It's one worth playing a few times. But let's get into how it actually works. In this scenario, I'm going to grab a few characters out. So let's start them in some capital cities. Obviously, you are going to have all of your tokens out. For this playthrough, I'm just going to be showing you through things. So I've baggied all mine into separate bags. They are different resources, so you do need different tokens. So it is very nice to have them separated. If we grab a resource for any reason, I'll just explain it rather than grab them out. I want to try and keep this short so you can watch it, think, I know enough about this to go play. So first things first, you do deal so some of these are going to have starting equipment. You're going to choose one of these each, deal one to each character, decide amongst yourselves who gets what. It normally makes sense, like the mage is going to want the staff and the knight is going to want the sword. You can build your character into anything though, so even though you're playing as the knight character, you can build up your mage, your range, play whatever you want, build your character how you want. It's just it's just a slight theme. You don't have to go entirely down that route. As well as what we mentioned before, you're going to choose 2 skills to have level 2 in. Just to touch on the skills briefly, melee obviously helps you fight up close, range at range. Magic, again, slightly less range, but you do get to do more things. So some of these tasks might have you magic something away, or they might have you make a range shot or something where you need these skills. So it is very dependent what you choose. Defense is always good if you're getting attacked by anything, again, from the random encounters, from the boss, from the mini boss. It's always nice to have some defense. Thieving is an interesting one. You can use it for a few things. So if a character dies, you can thieve your things back from death. You can use it as, again, a skill to steal stuff. For example, if you're at the Grand Exchange, thieving is quite popular to steal some gold from a pocket. Gathering is going to help you find stuff. Obviously, crafting is there to upgrade items. So like your starting equipment, let's grab one out, for example. Let's say we've got the leather body. This says upgrade resources, 2 pieces of pelt, a bar and a thread. We then make a crafting roll. So what these numbers mean is the 2 dictates your level. So if you were level 2, you would be the same as the skill requirement, meaning you would get 2 dice. However, if you were level 1, you would only get 1 dice. However, if you're level 3 or higher than 2 at least, you would get 3 dice. So having high stats is important in those ones that you're going to be partaking in. So if you're going to try and upgrade a load of items early on and try and rush to stronger items, then you probably do want to be looking at that because that's quite a powerful one. Last one is cooking, so that's going to help you make food. Food is good for fights, so there's some that you can eat in fights, there's some that you can eat outside. So there's a few different things. You can also get buffs and bonuses from them. So it's all worth doing. All of these stats are valuable. So there's never really a bad choice. It is how you want to build your character. And I think this does the character building quite well. It can be very easy to just go into a different skill if you want to. If we take a look here, characters also get side quests, and these give a ton of XP. So look there, you get 5 XP into magic. That's 2 levels and an extra XP. So it can be very quickly, like I say, to get into a different skill if you want to. So let's go into what you can actually do on your turn. Let's say we're playing as the mage here. A few things to note. In this order, you can move or teleport, you can make an action or explore, and finally you can make a bonus action. So move, you're going to move to any connected dotted line. So we could go here, we could go here, could go here, or finally we could go here. Now, if you don't want to go to any of these places, you can also teleport. Now to teleport, you're going to pay a gold piece. So you do need to have gold already, and then you're going to move to a capital city. Now there's a few things to note here. Obviously you lose a piece of gold, but also ending your turn in a capital city is going to move the escalation tracker up. So you're going to have a little token here. Just use this dice for now. And whenever you finish in a capital city, it's going to go up. Whenever you potentially lose something in the quest or one of the explorations goes wrong, it can also push it up. There's a few different ways it goes up, but the more it goes up, once it hits here, it's going to reset. And you're going to flip over cards to make the task more difficult. So you do really want to be careful pushing this up. You want to make sure you're progressing the story if you are going to push it up quickly, because pushing it up is going to have the vampire roaming around, causing trouble, dealing damage early on. So you do really want to try and balance this with the main quest line. So for example, let's say the mage teleported. It makes the most sense. Each character starts with 3 coins, so if we've started the game, we could spend 1 to get here. Once we're here, we gain this resource. We also, you can spend coins here, so we could spend 1 to gain 1 of these, or spend 2 to gain 1 of these. Now, you could spend 3 and gain 1 in each, or again, you could spend 6 and gain 1 in each of these. Depending on what you want to level up and what resources you need is where you're going to want to go. So for example, if we're still in Edgeville and we're thinking we really need to train our range this turn, so we're going to go to Barbarian Village instead. Now, the option of buying these is instead of Exploration. So if we're in Barbarian Village, we're going to go to the correct color. So it's going to be, in this case, this one, and we're going to flip it over. So this says Barbarian Village. Gunther, the barbarian leader, challenges you to a contest. So you'll notice here again, defense 4 and the skill is 8. So we'll go over it again. What that means is if we've got defense 4, we're going to get 2 dice. If we're lower than 4, we're going to get 1. If we're higher than 4, we're going to get 3. Now, in some cases, you can have armor and stuff that is going to add this extra dice. Let's say in this case, we've got 4 defense. You're not really going to start with that, but let's give ourselves a fighting chance. Here it says 8, so that is the skill check. These are D10s, and we're going to need to roll 8 or higher on either dice. Give them a roll. In this case, we would fail, so we would look what the fail is. We would suffer a wound. If we did succeed, we rolled an 8, for example, we would get to draw from the item deck. Once we've done the exploration, we could then gain a level in the range. So you do really want to decide where you want to go tactically, as you want to increase the right skills, you want to gain the right items, but also it's important to note what the quest says. So in this case, it says, the people of Gielenor village live in constant terror. Their numbers are dwindling, all due to a foul creature lurking in the manor to the north, known as the vampire. One villager, Morgan, seeks aid. So then it will tell you where you can go. An adventurer in Gielenor village with at least 1 defense can perform the following action. Speak to Morgan by collecting Vault Card 2. So let's say we moved into Gielenor village, which is over here. Instead of exploring Gielenor and finding a random event, we would then choose to do the quest action. So we would do what it says. It says collect Vault Card 2. So in this case here, and this card is going to progress the quest. You'll notice at the bottom it says gain 3 gold pieces and 1 defense. So you do get bonuses from completing these quests, so it's always worth doing. It'll give you some flavor text and some info, and then you can move on to the next line and start continuing the quest. Like I said, I'm not going to go into that and spoil any of it. I do think it's something you should play and test out yourselves. I'm just going to try and touch on everything that might come up in the game here, so you're ready to play through it yourselves. Finally, the last type of action at the end of your turn is a bonus action. Now this can be spent on a few things. The most notable, I think, is probably upgrading. So let's say we've got the bronze longsword on our knight here. So as a bonus action, we could upgrade our sword. So we would need 3 bars and 1 ore. We would then need to make a crafting test, which again, we'd need level 2 to get 2 dice. If we were level 1, we would get 1. And if we're higher than 2, we would get 3. If we managed to succeed, we would need a 6. Let's give it a go. Okay, that's a 5. Let's say it was a 10. We then go do what it says, discard all of the resources and collect a vault card 39. So you'd go back into the vault deck, which should be in order. Make sure you keep this in order. It does make life a lot easier for yourself. And in this case, you would get rid of your bronze longsword and you would now have a steel longsword. Whereas the bronze weapon added an extra dice to skill tests of level 2 or below, the steel does the same, but level 6 or below. So a lot more powerful, a lot more versatility. You can also upgrade it again. So if you look here, it says collect vault card 47. So in that case, let's just say later in the game we've done it. I'll let you discover that part for yourself. But like I say, that is a bonus action you can do at the end of your turn. And it does, it lets you power up your weapons. You can also make recipes, so you get recipe books or food, and there's other stuff that you can do as a bonus action just to finish off your turn. Normally it's those smaller actions that aren't really playing too much into things, but do let you, like I say, upgrade, make food, all of the stuff to help you out during your fights. At points, you might see a symbol here. Cards are going to be flipped over, and dread is going to spread amongst Gielenor. When you find a dread token, Let's say there's one in Draenor Village. Any checks I make there are going to be reduced by 1. So let's flip over a card. Let's just say Draenor Manor so we can do this one. So a monster looms, delay it or flee. So if I try to do this, let's say I've got 2 defense. I would normally get 3 dice because I've got a higher stat than is needed. However, because there is dread in Draenor Village, normally, like I say, represented by this symbol, you would put a token here. That would reduce my dice pool. So instead of getting the 3 I normally would, I would only get the 2. It makes life more difficult. It does mean deciding where to go is slightly more important. I think it's very thematical, obviously, especially I think dread normally spreads here first, obviously being the place of the vampire. Makes a ton of sense. Let's just touch on a few more things before we move into like the boss fights. Other things you can do as a bonus action is you can eat some food. So rations is going to heal you for 3. You can drink stuff like potions to remove wounds. However, if you're not able to remove those wounds in time, you will die. Now, dying is pretty rough. If any adventurer dies at any point, their turn immediately ends. Next thing you're going to do is dig out Death from the vault deck. You're going to read what it says. You're going to place him where it says. Normally it's somewhere in the same area. So if you died in like Burthorpe, you would place it around here in the red. The death card will remain in play, and then you place the death token in the same region as the adventurer. So let's say they died in Rimington. You would place death here, and they would go to the capital city nearest. You would take one of their equipment cards and put it under death, and again, you would have to go and try and thieve it back at some point. Depending where you die is how difficult it's going to be to do. Once you die, you discard all of your wounds, so you're technically healed back to full, but you also got to advance this escalation track, which we mentioned before, making the game more and more difficult. So you do want to try and avoid death if you can. You're going to increase your death tally on your sheet, which we mentioned before. Let's take a quick look at that so you know where it is. There's a death tally here. So make sure you're increasing that as you go. And like I say, finally, you're going to place your character in the closest capital city to where you died. We only had the 1 death, but we did lose a fishing rod from it, which was a little bit devastating. We didn't get a chance to get to death before we finished the quest. I'm going to look at the next quest and see how we set up and if death appears or he's just gone now. I think potentially we've lost the fishing rod. But that's the basics of the early game, so you're going to keep going through turns like that. Rewatch the video, go through, just double check, make sure you're increasing the escalation track whenever you die, whenever you finish in a capital city, whenever a card tells you to. All of this should be fairly straightforward. I do think this game looks a lot more complicated than it actually is. It's a ton of fun. It can be a little daunting, so hopefully this video has helped. But we're not finished yet. We've got to talk about mini bosses and the boss fight itself. Okay, so we will touch on this briefly. We're not going to go through it entirely, but this is a mini boss and it's normally brought up via quests. The mini boss will reveal a few actions, so you'll have a few choices on what you can do. Normally the first action is actually going to make it easier to do this action. So the first one will be like avoid a tendril as it lashes out at you. By doing that, you get closer to this, which is the one that actually damages it. So you sort of build up power on this one to make this one easier. The other way you can make things easier is having extra players join you. So if you're one adventurer, you're not going to get anything, but if somebody else joins you, you're going to get +1 to your skill, then -1 to difficulty, +1 to your skill again, and then another -1. So the more people you can get into it, the easier it's going to be, the faster it's going to be. So it is worth sticking together and yeah, just going through the motions, taking out the boss. It makes it a lot easier if there's a few of you, and obviously you do get to share in the XP then as well. We're going to look at the final boss mechanic here though. So basically your quest board, once you're ready to go in, you're going to flip over and you're going to have your health and the boss's health here. So depending on how many players there are, we played with 5, so we both had 20 HP each. If there's less of you, it changes and you get slightly more bonuses. So it's kind of difficult to set this up because each boss is going to be different. But for now, we'll set this one up. So you're going to put the coffin in the middle, which is where Count Draenor is going to be. And then you're going to put the unstable grounds in each corner. Now, there's a few things to note. The coffin itself says, while in this space, Count Draenor can suffer a maximum of 1 wound each turn. If Draenor is in this space at the end phase, he heals 1. So unfortunately, there's not many ways to move him, or actually you can sort of move around because he will chase you depending on his cards, which we'll get into in a second. So you do want to try and lure him off this coffin if possible. You're going to set your characters up as you see fit. So let's go here, here, and here. Let's talk about the unstable ground quickly. It says adventurers on this space can never roll more than 1 die when taking a melee or defense skill test. So you don't really want to be stuck on these things. They are, as they say, unstable. Try and move around them. You can't move diagonal though, so eventually you're going to have to move on to them or go through the dreaded coffin itself, which is, like I said, you do want to lure it away from there. So it's never the best of choices. You're then going to take the initiative cards. So here we've got all 5 characters. And then again, we've got the behavior cards for Count Draenor himself. We're going to shuffle these individually. So we're going to shuffle his deck. And then we're going to shuffle our deck. Because these are going to alternate. So you do want to put one, then the other. So we're going to deal one of ours. And then we're going to deal one of his. And this is just going to create an initiative order. So as you can see, the knight is going to go first. And then we've got one of his attacks. And then we've got vice versa, vice versa. It's just going to keep going back and forth until you run out of cards. You're going to work from here to here. So let's go through a turn and I'll explain what happens. I'm not going to go through it all because, again, I don't want to spoil it. There's some cool surprises in this. Maybe these unstable grounds have some other ghouly goings on the back side. So the knight goes first. Our knight is here. On your turn, you can move and you can attack. There are also 2 support powers where you can read the terrain and help people move, or you can move around the tracking order depending if you need somebody to act before the vampire does. So there's a few ways you can play it tactically. Normally though, you're just going to make a move and attack. However, you do need to bear in mind what the vampire is going to do next. So like I said, here are your combat actions. For a melee attack, you inflict 1 wound on Count Draenor for each successful dice. It is a skill 5 and you need to roll an 8, so it's going to be quite difficult to do. Unless you're quite high level, you're not going to get that many dice to roll. Range slightly easier with a skill check of 3, needing a 6. Same as magic. Notice range is 2 squares instead of the 1 though, so slightly more versatile. And then like I said, you can read the terrain or sleight of hand, which is just going to move the initiative tracker around or maybe move somebody around, depending what you need to do. You can move Count Draenor as well, so there are a few bonuses to that one. One thing I did forget, so good job I did open this, the person with the highest crafting is going to start next to Count Draenor, and that's just to signify them cracking open the coffin, as that is what starts this quest. So I think in our case it was me, so I'm going to put me on there. So all of the different movements here, let's talk about the card though. So you can look ahead for what's about to happen. So in this case, it's 2 arrows to the side, which means they're going to move towards the adventurer with the initiative card furthest to the right. So in this case, it's going to be all the way to the archer. So we can sort of plan for that. So if he's going to move towards the archer, if it was the archer's turn, he would probably hold here. Just because this dot here means it's going to attack in the same space. You'll notice here, same space. This one attacks in a row, this one in a column. So there's a few different ways it attacks, a few different ways it moves. And that's a lot of the strategy of this. I think the combat is it's very simple, but it is very clever. It's very tactical. You do have to get into it. You do have to come up with those plans. Like I said, we got through by the skin of our teeth. It really was that close. It's fun enough and simple enough that anyone can get into it, but it's tactical enough. It just gets you thinking, all of this you need to sort of plan ahead. You need to attack when you can. Maybe you just want to lure them away for a turn. There's plenty to do in this. The only other thing to note in a boss fight is the enrage marker. So when it hits 5, and this is the only first time it happens, Count Draenor is going to enrage. Again, I'm going to have to grab the book here because this is very much boss specific. So Count Draenor's enrage says, remove him from the battlefield, flip the coffin terrain card to the closed side and the 4 unstable ground terrain cards to the skeleton side. So a little bit of a spoiler there. Place each adventurer on the unstable ground terrain as evenly spread out as possible. So since it says in the book, I think we're kind of fine to show you this. So this is going to flip to closed, and you can see there is a crafting check on it. So we're going to have to crack that open because he's going to slowly regen each turn. Then all of these are going to be flipped Like we mentioned, the skeletons and the characters are going to be thrown onto them as Count Draenor disappears. Now you're going to need to make an attack to deal with this skeleton. If you attack it and win, it's destroyed. If you fail, it kicks you off the square and deals you with damage. These are very difficult. Like if you're on these squares, you don't have any other choice. You can't move off them. You need to fight. So you're kind of stuck for a turn, which is not good. Does mean he's going to get at least to heal some. But that's the boss fight. Like I say, there's a ton of different bosses, a ton of different expansions. So each boss is unique. I've had a look through and they play very differently. There's a ton of other actions you can take and the boards are different and the fighting mechanics are different. This game has honestly nailed it for us. I think everyone in the group. There's a few players that are very hard to please and they were absolutely ecstatic with this game. It's a favorite for everyone that was at the table, honestly. And you can easily see why. The miniatures are incredible, the gameplay, the RPG aspect, the RuneScape feel to it. If you're a RuneScape fan, you're absolutely gonna adore this. But that is RuneScape Kingdoms, one of my favorite games of recent. I was gonna do a small review in here, but I think it really does deserve its own video. Sure to say, I absolutely love this one. Everyone at the table loved it. If you're a RuneScape fan, if you're a campaign RPG fan, if you enjoy Steam-forged other games, stuff like Skyrim and things like that, you're going to love this one. So I'd say go out and grab it, go out and try it. There's tons of expansions, tons of replayability. Even the same quests are fun. There's so many different scenarios and different paths you can take. But that's the video. Like I say, there will be a full review coming on the channel because I do think this game deserves it. If you've got any questions, drop them in the comments below. That's all I've got for this episode though, so I will catch you in the next one.